Okay, so today we're going to go over how to deflicker your time-lapse photos and videos using a program called TimeLapse DeFlicker, which looks like this, but we're going to go over it a little bit later. I'm going to show you a before and after, essentially, for deflickering your time-lapse photos and videos. You can create a time-lapse with any video editing program. Final Cut, Davinci Resolve, Adobe Premiere. The main thing is you want to, or you have to, make sure that your sequence of photos is named in sequence. And this is why it's important to keep the file names of your photos, or if you're working on them in Lightroom or whatnot, to export them as a sequence from like 1 to, in this case, 388. Once you import that folder into your video editing program will see it as a sequence of photos which make up a video, essentially. 388 pictures played back at 24 frames per second. That is your video, essentially. So make sure that you've got it named as a sequence. Once you do that, you just basically import them into your video editing program, and it will play it back as a video. The issue is, like this case, this was shot towards the end of the day, or the sun was going down, so there is a bit of a light change from beginning to end. As you can see in the beginning of the video, the sun was starting to set, and then towards the end of the video, it got a little bit darker. I shot on aperture priority, which basically keeps the f-stop the same, but the shutter speed will change. And as you sort of scrub through your video, you'll see that as the sun's going down, the light is changing on the clouds, on the water, and as you get towards the end of the video, the scene gets darker, but the camera is trying to compensate by keeping the levels the same, particularly in the sky and the water and the rocks. Even though it is, to the naked eye, getting darker, the camera is trying to maintain that same light level. And what ends up happening as you play it back is there are some frames that are darker, some frames that are lighter, and that creates flicker. So the program that we're going to be using after we've exported this is a program called TimeLapse DeFlicker. And I use it for pretty much all my time lapses, whether it's nature stuff, whether it's inside a studio, under LED lighting. You're always going to get a bit of flicker. But what we're going to do here is just, because the images were 4:3, I'm just going to basically zoom in and create a 16:9 image, or video, I should say, on this. So you can kind of crop it so that, I mean, in this case, I got rid of some of the rocks. I wanted to kind of keep the clouds in there. We're going to export this as a non-deflickered video. Sort of choose your files where you want to export them to. Give it a name. 1080p. 4K if you want, depending on what you want to do with it. 24 frames per second. Generally, that's a nice sort of cinematic playback speed. Throw it in your render queue, and away you go. With Resolve, you can change a whole bunch of stuff. You can change the quality. I usually just kind of keep it at whatever the default is. It seems to know what to do, so I don't really want to mess with it. Add it to your render queue, and click your render. And once this is done, we will take a look at that non-deflickered sunset clouds in the sky time lapse. And again, depending on how robust your computer is and how much horsepower it has, will determine how long it'll take. But again, you can do this in any video editing program. You can create a time-lapse video just out of a sequence of images pretty easily. But it's not really a finished product until you deflicker it somehow. Alright, so we're done with that. We can basically now open up that video and play it back And as you can see, there's a lot of flickering going on there. Ooh, yeah, see how the camera is trying to maintain those levels, but not really doing a very good job at it. Some cameras will do a better job at it than others. I mean, that's just given. But all cameras will have a little bit of flicker. All right, so now we're going to open up TimeLapse DeFlicker, and as you can see, super simple interface. Don't be alarmed if you open it up and this is what you see, because that's what you have. What we're going to do here is we're going to open up the series of images, the same images that we just did in Davinci Resolve to create a time lapse. But we're going to import all of these images into TimeLapse DeFlicker. Sort of just drag them all over into there, and it will do its thing, get all the metadata, analyze all the photos once they're in, generate your thumbnails. It'll run, sort of do a slow kind of run through of the images themselves, generating the thumbnails, getting what information it does. But in the meantime, we can kind of go over the main interface here. DeFlicker, we want to make sure that check mark is checked. Noise reduction I don't really do, because I do most of my noise reduction, if any, in Lightroom or whichever photo editing program you use. Blend, I don't really mess with that. I haven't really played around with that too much, but you can experiment with that if you want. I just kind of like not mess with it. I find that if you play back at 24 frames per second, that's a nice sort of quote-unquote cinematic playback speed. So it's pretty good. But if you want to mess with this, you can. You can number frames to blend, you can darken, lighten, you can change the quality level, all that kind of stuff. Alright, now that that's finished its little import there, we can... one of the cool things about this is you can do some editing in TimeLapse DeFlicker. You basically just choose a keyframe to edit, check that off, and what you can do is you can kind of mess with really basic stuff: temperature, tint, saturation, brightness, black point, midtones, all that kind of stuff. I'm not really going to mess with it today because I've already done my editing in Lightroom, but say if you were to import just a series of non-edited photos, you can do some basic editing with them in this, which is kind of cool. So you don't need essentially Adobe Lightroom or any kind of photo editing software. If you've just got a point and shoot or basic DSLR or whatnot, you can do some basic editing in TimeLapse DeFlicker. We're just going to leave everything as is. Don't click on that. I mean, you can if you want, but I don't. I mean, if your image just has a bunch of noise in it, you can. That's up to you. But that is if you sort of want to reduce, like say you shot something that's towards nighttime or whatever, or in a dark room or whatnot. I don't know. And it's got some noise. You can click on that to sort of get rid of the noise or the grain. So again, just make sure that DeFlicker thing is clicked. Click on the render thing. Here's the sort of main interface here, where you will give your project a name. TLDF is the default one that kind of pops up there. I like to keep that just so that I know which files, whether it's photos, videos, have been deflickered. If you take that off there, you might, oh, have I deflickered this? I have no idea. But by keeping that on there, you'll know that that when you're looking through your files, that that TimeLapse DeFlicker prefix on there lets you know that it's been done. From there, sort of choose your folder that you want to output your files to, whether they're the photos, videos. I always just kind of give things names: videos, deflickered, non-deflickered, that kind of thing. But we're going to save this to the video file that I've created. Give it a name. In this case, we're going to do TLDF deflickered, so we know that this file has been deflickered. You can output deflickered images if you want. I don't generally do that. I always just kind of output video, but in this case we're going to do both, so you can kind of see. it's just in case you want to import those deflickered images back into some sort of video editing program to mess around with them some more. You can. Again, I don't usually, just because the product that I'm going to output from TimeLapse DeFlicker is going to be a finished product generally. But for today, we're going to output the images and the video, just so you can see that that's what this program is capable of doing. You can select whichever kind of image file you want. I'm just going to keep mine a JPEG, but you can do TIFF, PNG, XRs. I'm going. I mean, by default it says auto crop to 16:9. You can output at 4K, 1440, 1080p, 720. Lots of different options, different frame rates as well. I generally just do mine at 24. But again, you've got 30 frames, 29.97, 25 for the PAL people, 23.976 if you want to get fancy. 1 frame per second. I've never done one of those. I don't even know what that's for. But yeah, for just simplicity's sake, I'm going to sort of keep mine at 24 frames per second. And again, auto crop. If you want to output a finished product, auto crop 16:9 is clicked by default. But if you want to keep it at the 4:3 ratio, if you want to do any further edits to it in a video editing program, it might be a good idea just to uncheck that in case you want to do some sort of zooming or panning with a larger image. Like if you output 4K uncropped video, then basically you can do a zoom, you can do a pan. If you want to output it at like 1080p, you've got a lot of image real estate to work with. In this case, we're just going to output a 16:9 4K video. Again, just got to go over all your stuff, make sure everything looks good. Target bit rates, by default it's at 50 megabits per second. Sometimes I bump it up to 100 just to kind of increase the image quality. These are good things. If you sell your videos, say on the variety of different stock agencies like Shutterstock or Pond5 or Adobe Stock or any of those ones, higher bit rates generally sell better, better quality. That's kind of what people are looking for these days, 4Ks and high bit rates and all that kind of stuff. So again, just kind of go over, make sure everything is fine. You click on the old render thing there and it'll do its thing. And again, depending on how many images you have and how fast your computer is or how much horsepower it's got will determine how long it's going to take. I've got a pretty decent system, so something like this will probably take 5 to 6 minutes to kind of go through and do its thing. And again, depending on how complicated the image is. In this case, there's a lot of weird cloud stuff going on and some ripples in the water, and so there's a lot of information that the program has to go through to do its thing. But it'll sort of just churn away, so you can go grab a drink or a cup of coffee or something and let it do its thing. I remember back in the olden days of doing this, with dual core processors and 4 gigs of RAM. I mean, this is something that you'd probably want to do late at night or overnight or whatnot, depending on how many images you have and how complicated they are. Yeah, I mean, again, tons of information in this image for it to kind of churn through. I've done some super simple, coin stacking time lapses that have super simple backgrounds and it just blazes through it. But again, the more complicated the image, the longer it'll take. So we are going to probably come back to this once it's done, and then we'll take a look at it. And again, a really good use for a program like this is if you do create time-lapse videos for more of a commercial usage as opposed to just a personal usage. You want your time lapses to look as clean and crisp and as quote-unquote sellable as possible, particularly if you do sell through the stock agencies. This is where you can get the program, TimeLapseDeFlicker.com. super simple website, some samples of their of what it can do. There's forums, there's trial versions of them if you want to use for both Mac and PC. You can download a trial version of it. It does put a watermark on the images. You basically get them through the Microsoft Store. There's the trial version of it. Gives you some screenshots, some basic information. Not a lot of super high horsepower that you need. 6 gigs of RAM would probably be what I would suggest if you don't want to wait too long to do things. And the Windows version, $28 US. Not terrible compared to the plugins that you can get for Lightroom, which are $150 plus. For a separate program that kind of does a little bit of everything. Basic editing, you can deflicker photos, you can deflicker existing video, which is kind of cool. Yeah, $28, not a huge amount of money for something that can make your time-lapse videos look much better than straight out of the camera or just as a sequence exported from a video editing program. Definitely worth the money. And again, if you're shooting time-lapse stuff for commercial use, again, for stock agencies or whatnot, it is a must. I would say you can't really sort of put up a flickered time-lapse to your website or websites that sell your product and really expect them to sell, because everybody else is producing stuff that's pretty good these days. And they're all running through some sort of deflickering software, whether it's a plugin, whether it's a standalone program like this. You need your time lapses to look as good as they possibly can. And for $28, this program does the job. And this is definitely not a sponsored post. I just love this program. I've looked at other options, the plugins for Lightroom and stuff, and I'm just like, $150? I don't think so. And I can get something that does as good a job and a little bit more for $28. Definitely worth my money, at least. So, and once this is done, we'll come back to it and check out the unflickered version that came out of Resolve, and the deflickered version that came out of TimeLapse DeFlicker. There we go. 6 minutes to do its thing for 388 images. That's not too bad. Alright, so now that that is done, what we can do is we can see where it is. So basically it exported all of the images as deflickered images. Sort of scroll through them just to make sure they're all there. Yeah, right size, right file size, JPEGs. We should have 389 images. That's 389 files, 388 images, and 1 video. Here is the there's the video, and we can go ahead and close the program. Take a look at the videos now. This is the deflickered one. Looks pretty good. Again, a lot of information for that program to work through. Looks pretty smooth. And we're going to take a look at the non-deflickered one right now. As you can see how it's kind of bouncing up and down. It's kind of going through some slightly dark and some slightly lighter images. Ooh, right through there. Yep. And we can take a look at the side by side, or top and bottom. Bottom one is non-deflickered, top one is deflickered. So as you can see, it does a much better job of presenting that file as good as it possibly can be. Yeah, it's a great program. Love it. One of the cool things about this program is you can deflicker existing video. And there's a lot of cameras that can output a time-lapse video as you're shooting a time-lapse. GoPro does it. A lot of sort of higher-end point-and-shoots can do it. Your smartphone can do it. DSLRs can do it. So not only just shooting images as a sequence, it can also output a time-lapse video, or even shoot a time-lapse video as you're shooting. But it's just a time-lapse video. It hasn't been deflickered or anything. So it's basically just a raw time-lapse video. So what TimeLapse DeFlicker can do is it can deflicker an existing time-lapse video that you haven't done any work to. I have some old time-lapse videos that I shot years ago that I never ran through any kind of deflickering software. And I've lost the image files or whatever. But here's a perfect example. This is a video time-lapse that I shot towards the end of the day as the sun was going down. I wanted to kind of capture a buttercup flower closing. So naturally the light source was diminishing, because that's what happens to flowers as the sun goes down, as they start to close. So I wanted to get one of those sort of nature channel kind of sequences of a flower closing. And I don't have the image files for this anymore, but I do have the video. So what a great thing this program can do is basically deflicker an existing flickering time-lapse video. This is only 18 seconds. It's 1080p. This is the only version of it I have. But to show you guys exactly one of the benefits of this program is the ability to deflicker existing time-lapse videos, which is great. I mean, same thing. You could basically even export your image sequence out of your video editing program, create a time-lapse video, and then just dump this video into this program and have it deflicker it, as opposed to doing the images. I mean, you could do either or. But what I find this good for is if you have existing video that you want to deflicker, and it works great. Same interface, same everything. You just drag and drop the video file into the interface. Again, make sure that the deflicker thing is checked off. Noise reduction, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to do any noise reduction to this, because I do believe that I kind of, when I was processing the images originally, pretty much got rid of any noise that I wanted. It's going to do its thing. Image looks pretty good. Not going to mess around with it too much. I just wanted to show you guys how to deflicker the video. All right, so there's the what it's done is it's basically just broken down the video into frames, as you can see on the right hand side. So you can edit the frames if you want. You can edit the video just like you can with the images. You just choose one of your keyframes and make any adjustments you want to it. And this is good. Again, sort of after the fact. I mean, like I said, this video's an older one. Let's say, maybe I want to change it. Maybe I want to make it brighter. Maybe I want to sharpen it up a little bit. Who knows, right? I mean, you can do all these things with it. So in this particular case, maybe I'll bump up the sharpness a little bit. Just kind of bring out the detail a little bit more than that. And there you sort of go through there. I'm not going to do any noise reduction. We're just going to deflicker it pretty much. Click on the render. Same thing. We are going to keep that prefix, I should say. We're going to choose where to export it. Choose that. We're going to throw it in the video folder. TLDF Buttercup Deflickered, I think is what that's what I created. Select the folder. We're not going to output images. We're just going to do a video. Although, maybe I should. Do I want to? Nah, they're just 1080. That's fine. We're just going to output video on this. And again, it's just a 1080p video. But if you want to downsize it, maybe upload it to YouTube, Twitter, whatever, you can do that. We're going to keep it at 1080, 24 frames per second. I am going to not click on auto crop because it's already cropped at 16 by 9. I think if the program recognizes that, it doesn't default check that. But I am going to bump up the bitrate a bit to 50 megabits per second. Make sure everything's done. Click on render. Now, because this is only a 18-second video, 1080p, it will not take very long at all. Probably maybe like a minute or so. But yeah, that's one of the cool things about this program is the ability to do this. And again, for existing time-lapse videos that you have, that your camera shot, that your GoPro did, and you don't want to edit all the photos, you don't want to go through all that hassle, you can just basically just dump the video right into the program and deflicker it from there. So you're deflickering an existing video into a deflickered video, which I think is a great feature of this program. And again, not terribly expensive for a program that does what it does is fantastic. And then once this is done, you can see the difference between a non-deflickered video, existing video, versus a deflickered video. So this is the non-deflickered one. As you can see, there's a fair bit of changes in the image right there. And you're going to get this if you're shooting on aperture priority as the sun's going down. And this is the deflickered version of it. So pretty good. Does a great job of deflickering that video. I just love when you're doing time lapses, you can see all little bugs and stuff crawling around that you wouldn't have noticed as you're shooting it. And there you have it, TimeLapseDeFlicker.com. Super simple, really easy to use. Trial versions. They have a forum if you have any questions, some sample videos up on their website. Thanks for checking this out, everybody. I will be back in about a week or so with another video. In the meantime, check out my stuff at JWPhotoworks.com, all over the socials, and we'll see you again. Thanks.